Chaksurunmilitan yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Nitamscha Hey Krishna Karana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today is certainly an auspicious day. First of all, today is celebrated as Guru Purnima. Guru Purnima is not something which we celebrate in ISKCON usually, but Guru Purnima is like all the representatives of Srila Vyasadeva. They celebrate their appearance day today. Of course, in ISKCON, each individual spiritual teacher has his own Vyasa Puja. We make a distinction. The different days for the different devotees according to their appearance in this world. But some people, they do it all on one day. All the spiritual teachers are worshipped on this day. Today is also the disappearance day of Srila Sanatana Goswami. So Srila Sanatana Goswami appeared over in Jessore, in a village in Jessore. And we have a temple there in Jessore, if you go there, Rup Sanatan Mandir in Bangladesh. Anybody been to Bangladesh? Yeah, been? No? Yeah, you been?
During my profession.
During your profession, yeah, okay. So, we have many temples there, there's many devotees there, and Jessore, not far away from the border with India. And we have a nice temple there. So Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, they both appeared there. Later on, Sanatana Goswami was engaged in the service of the Nawab Hussain Shah. The Nawab Hussain Shah is quite a prominent personality in history. And recently I was in Ramakeli, and they have a number of places where the Nawab Hussain Shah utilized, like his home, or his palace, or his prison, different places. So, a devotee there in over in Malda, which is just near to Ramakeli, he told me a number of tourists often come from America and from Europe and like that, historians, and they come to visit. And they come to visit because of the Nawab. They're interested in the Nawab. We are interested in Rupa and Sanatana Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Ramakeli is one of the places where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. He came there and he met Rupa and Sanatana. It's a very beautiful place, Ramakeli. If you get the opportunity sometime, you should go try to visit. Near to Malda. Malda from Mayapur is about 6 hours or something. From Calcutta it's also about 6 hours. Overnight train. I was there recently for Rath Yatra for a day. I went to Malda, went one night, had a program the next day and came back that night. So, Ramakeli is a beautiful village, and there are many cows. You see a lot of cows roaming around. So when Rupa and Sanatana were living there, Sanatana Goswami was actually planning to make Ramakeli like a replica of Vrindavan. He was actually excavating Ramakeli, and there was a number of bathing ghats, lakes there, pakurs. And so he named each of them like Ramakund, Chamakund, and Lalitakund, and Vishakakund, different, they were named. So there's a temple there. There's a small temple there which is maintained by the government. It's quite a nice temple. And also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada had installed the footprints of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu there at Ramakeli. So Rupa and Sanatana were living there, and they had been engaged by the Nawab. Sanatana Goswami had become the secretary to the Nawab. And the Nawab, he's like the emperor practically of Bengal. And Sanatana Goswami was his secretary. And you can read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described how the Nawab was saying to Sanatana that I have to go and fight. I depend on you to maintain everything, He was the secretary of the Nawab, personal secretary. So Sanatana Goswami was like in charge of everything. When the Nawab would go away with his army to fight, they would go like to Orissa to fight there, the different kings. And at that time Sanatana would be in charge. And they had been given names. They didn't actually give up Hindu Dharma, but practically speaking, almost like, because they changed the names. Sanatana became Dabirkas, and Rupa Goswami became Sakara Malik. So it was customary that some people, they got a Muslim name, it's like a title given to them. And you can read in Chaitanya Charitamrita about some different people. There's one, Ramananda Khan from Kulinagram, how he came and met with Lord Chaitanya. So Khan, that's a Muslim name, but it's a title which was given to him. He was a devotee, he was a Vaishnava, but he was given that title somehow by the Muslim rulers. So, Prabhupada was talking about it to the devotees. He was explaining to them. They would take these Muslim names. And Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, they were associating regularly with these Muslims, like the Nawab, when the Nawab would come, because they were both serving the Nawab. One was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the other one was like the personal secretary. So they had very intimate dealings. But of course it was very contaminating for them, and they understood that. So they heard about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They were living in Ramakeli, and Lord Chaitanya is over in Mayapur, some distance apart, but news travels, and especially Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is performing wonderful pastimes. For example, he had defeated Keshava Kashmiri. As a young man, he had defeated Keshava Kashmiri. And then, after that, then he had organized the disobedience march against the Chankasi. And then after that, he'd taken sannyas. And so, when he took sannyas, that was, really something really big. And then he left and went to Jagannath Puri, and in Jagannath Puri, he delivered Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and made Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya into a Vaishnava. Although Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a jnani, but after meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, became a devotee. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was really prominent, because he was the one who was training all the sannyasis, teaching them Vedanta. So when he became a devotee, that was very big news, went shockwaves all over Bharatvarsh. So Rupa and Sanatan, or Dabir Kas and Sakara Malik, they're in Ramakeli and they're hearing about this. So they started to write to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they wrote to him, and they expressed appreciation for his movement and for his teaching. Because they were both, Rupa and Sanatan, they were both from Carnatic Brahmana families. Although they were born up in Bengal, their caste traced back to Karnataka. And they were from a high-class line of Brahmanas there. And as young children, they were trained in the Shastras and the Shruti and the Smriti. And they were given the best dharmic education. But as the will of the Lord would have it, somehow they contacted the Nawab, or rather the Nawab contacted them, because he heard about them, and he heard how they were very educated materially. He didn't worry, he's not very much concerned about their spirituality, but he heard they were very materially educated. So the Nawab wants them to rule and take care of the kingdom and look after all the people who are there and make sure everything goes on nicely in his kingdom. So he utilized Rupa and Sanatan for that. And so they heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they wrote to Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya wrote back. They must have sent messengers. How would they send letters? No handphones, right? No mobile, no email, and no snail mail. How do they do it? Somehow they just hire some kind of Brahmin or somebody, like when Rukmini wanted to send a message to Krishna, she sent a Brahmana with the message to Krishna to go all the way to Dwarka. And so they must have done something like that. They must have hired someone to go there to Puri to deliver the mail to Lord Chaitanya. Not so far away. Mother Sachi, she wanted Lord Chaitanya to stay in Puri, because then she could get news. She said, Puri and Navadvip are like two rooms in the one house. Just like this building here, 2 rooms. If something goes on in the other room, you'll know about it, right? Look at the same building. So Mother Sachi said, Navadvip and Puri are like that. So she asked Lord Chaitanya that now you're sannyas, please don't go to Vrindavan, because if you go to Vrindavan, I won't get news of you very easily. So just go and stay in Jagannath Puri. So that happened. So Dabir Kas and Sakara Malik, they had attracted the attention of Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya understood these 2 persons are very special, very educated, very literate, they knew many languages, right? Sanatana Goswami knew Sanskrit, Bengali, Persian, Arabic, Urdu, all, whatever these different languages, they were all used then. And so he was fluent in all of these different languages. So Lord Chaitanya decided he would come. Lord Chaitanya was going to go to Vrindavan, but he decided that on the way he would go to Ramakeli, go and see Rupa and Sanatan, and encourage them to get out from that job. Right? Were some of you working before you became devotees? Yes, you had a job before you, yeah? Some of you, most of you, probably. Yeah, before becoming devotee, you have a job. And then somebody tells to you, just give up that job. Right? Yeah, people always laugh when I say that. I say, what's the big deal, job? You can always get jobs, there's always other jobs. Why be so attached to a job? No, you give up the job and become a devotee. Especially the women go, oh. Because the married women especially, oh no, don't want my husband to give up his job. Anyway, Rupa and Sanatan, they got association from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramakeli. And Lord Chaitanya told them, better you get out from this job. Serving the Nawab, these cow killers, meat eaters, not good association. Working for such people like that, certainly you get some karma. So Lord Chaitanya told them, you have to get out, give up this work. So Rupa Goswami, he immediately got away. Immediately he left, and he divided his wealth, whatever wealth he had. It's described he had a lot of wealth. So much it could fill a boat, right? But it said he divided his wealth in a very exemplary manner. He gave half to the brahmanas and the devotees. And he gave 25% to his family, and he kept 25% for himself, for emergencies. So Prabhupada said that's very ideal. Sometimes people they say, oh, I have to give half my income. Well, Rupa Goswami did that when he was retiring. You have to understand, he was not a young man, he was getting older. And he was retiring from work. When you're working in a job, you just begin to work. You're a young man and you have a family, you may have children. So you can't really, it's not easy to give 50%. Unless you're a big businessman or very successful and you make a lot of money or something. Some people can do it, but not many people. It's very difficult to be able to give 50%. Kolaveka Sridhar used to do it, of course. He was an exception. Alright, so Rupa Goswami, he got away, and Sanatana Goswami, somehow he couldn't get away immediately, and he was held back. And he was engaging in doing many different activities to purify himself for becoming a devotee, because he's going to leave the job. So he's purifying himself. So he had brahmanas come do yajna, and he had other brahmanas come teach him the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he had brahmanas come feed the brahmanas and do charity. He was doing all these different activities. He was preparing for leaving. So he was not going to job, he was not going to office. And so the Nawab wondered, where is our Dabir Ghas? What's happening? And they said, oh, he's not well. They told the Nawab, he's not well, he's not coming to office. And so the Nawab decided he would go and see, and he went to the residence of Sanatan, and he saw that he was perfectly well, but he was engaged in all these religious activities. So the Nawab was angry at him and decided to put him in the prison. Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, when he goes to Yatra in Bengal, they will go to Ramakeli sometimes. So the devotees told me that because they have, sometimes they'll do the safari. After Gaur Purnima, Jayapataka Maharaj used to like to take safari out, and they'll go and visit different holy places. So sometimes they go to Ramakeli. And when they go to Ramakeli, they'll do a drama. And they'll do the drama. There's this one big, it's like a mausoleum or something, one of these big curved wall buildings, big building, historic building, protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. It's a protected building. So devotees go there, you can go inside it, and they say this is the prison where Sanatana Goswami was held. And they do the drama about Sanatana Goswami in the prison. You know the story, it's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sanatana Goswami is put in the prison by the Nawab. So Sanatana Goswami, a very intelligent man, so he makes friends with the jailer. The jailer, and Sanatan's telling the jailer, he said, I want to go to Mecca. I want to go to Mecca. If I can get free, I will go to Mecca, and I will offer prayers for you also. He tells the jailer like that. And to tempt the jailer even more, because Rupa Goswami had kept 25% of his savings for emergency, he had left it with a merchant in the village. So Sanatana Goswami told the jailer, I will go to Mecca and offer, and there's also this money, these gold coins we will give to you. So the jailer's going, oh, well, very tempting. But he said, but how will I explain how you got free? So Sanatan said, just tell them that you took me to the bank of the Ganga in order to meet nature's needs, somehow, pass stool or something like this. He said, you took me to the bank of the Ganga and I fell in. So you just tell them like that, I fell in the Ganga and drowned. So the jailer thought, oh, okay, so he let Sanatan go. So Sanatan got out, and he'd heard from Rupa Goswami, he'd heard from his brother that Lord Chaitanya was going to go to Vrindavan, and so Rupa and Sanatan wanted to be there to meet him. So Sanatan got out of jail, and somehow he got one servant to go with him. And they had 8 gold coins with them. So they came to this area. It's a mountainous region. And you can go there today also, and you can see this mountainous region. It's a big mountain. There's a waterfall comes down the side of the mountain, and you can see the monkeys there and everything. And so Sanatan had to cross the mountain, but he didn't know the path across the mountain. But he found there was a traveller's inn, place where they could spend the night. So Sanatan decided they would spend the night there in the traveller's inn. But when they got there in the innkeeper was very, very nice to them. And Sanatan was suspicious that this man must have some evil intentions. Why? Because he's so nice. So Sanatan was suspicious that this man must have some evil intention. So what happened, the gold coins were with the servant who was with Sanatan. So Sanatan asked the servant, have you got gold coins with you? And the servant said, yes. So he told the servant, said, give them to that man, give them to the innkeeper, just give him the gold coins. So they gave the innkeeper the gold coins, and when the innkeeper got the gold coins, then he felt very happy. He said, you know, I was going to kill you to get these, because somehow the innkeeper knew that they were carrying money, and he was planning to kill them in the night. But they'd given the money, so the innkeeper felt grateful. But what happened was the servant didn't give all the money. He kept 1 gold coin for himself. So the servant still had this 1 gold coin. So Sanatan told the servant, he said, now you go back. He said, you go back. He said, don't come with me, because you'll just bring a death load on me, because you're attached, attached to wealth. Sanatan wants to give up everything, completely renounce everything. So the innkeeper was so appreciative that they'd given him the gold coins. He said, I will arrange for you to cross the mountain. And so in this way Sanatan crossed the mountain. And then he came to a place where one of his relatives was. A nephew was there. And the nephew saw Sanatan, and he saw he'd been in prison, so his clothes were old. They didn't look very fresh. Usually when he would see his uncle, he would see him well dressed, but this time, because he'd just come out of prison, he had oldish, raggy-ish clothes. So his nephew gave him a nice blanket, a beautiful blanket with embroidery on it. So Sanatan took the blanket and he was wearing it. And then he went on and he went to Benares. And it was in Benares that he met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was actually waiting outside the door of the house. And Lord Chaitanya was inside with Tapana Mishra and Chandrasekhar Acharya. And Lord Chaitanya he said, a great devotee has now come, he's out the door. Go outside and bring him in. So one of them went outside and they saw this man he looked like a Muslim mendicant. And because you know the Muslims, you know, they have the beard, you know, the mustache and the beard. And even the clothes, you know, they wear these different clothes. You can tell immediately somebody's a Muslim. You know, it's not hard to guess, you know, who is a Muslim, because they don't shave the faces, right? When the Taliban came back in power in Afghanistan, they told, no more shaving faces. Everybody had to grow the beard, you know, and they told the barber shops, be warned, don't shave any faces. So Sanatana is there and he's got this beard because he's been in jail, and also because he's been with the Muslims. He looked like a Muslim. And so they saw him and he told Lord Chaitanya, he's a Muslim mendicant. And Lord Chaitanya went outside and Lord Chaitanya saw him and embraced him. And they were, wow, you know, he's embracing this Muslim, you know. They were shocked. Lord Chaitanya is a sannyasi, and he's gone and embraced this Mohammedan man. But Lord Chaitanya explained, this is, he's a great devotee. And Lord Chaitanya then told the devotee, take him and make him clean. In other words, shave him up. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote an article called Srila Sanatana Goswami. And in that article, he talks about some of the deviant lines of the Vaishnava Sampradaya, which came about from Sanatana Goswami. Because just like there's a class of Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they're not really Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but they say they are. They're called the Baula Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And they all grow the beard and the mustache. They all have the beard and the mustache. And why do they have the beard and mustache? They say, Sanatana Goswami had a beard and mustache when he came to surrender to Lord Chaitanya. He had a beard, so we're following him. Yeah. So this is but they don't say Lord Chaitanya told him to go and get clean. They don't say that. They say, no, Sanatan, he had a beard. We also have our beards. Sometimes devotees would grow beards also in Prabhupada's time, and Prabhupada would just encourage them, you know, go and shave, don't grow this. Of course, Chaturmasya, maybe you could do it. Chaturmasya. So, when some devotees asked Prabhupada about doing Chaturmasya and growing beard and hair, and Prabhupada said, he said, for you, it will be sense gratification. To have long hair and beard, this is sense gratification for you. It's not the austerity. For the pure-hearted Vaishnava, it's the austerity. You know, we like to be clean. But sometimes people, they like, you know, from the hippie days and from the days before, you know, before being devotees, had hair, long hair and beard. Anyway, Lord Chaitanya got Sanatana shaved up and made clean, but he still had his blanket. And Lord Chaitanya was looking, he didn't say anything, but he was looking at the blanket. And Sanatana could understand that this blanket is not appropriate. So he went to bathe, and he went to some bathing ghat nearby, and at the bathing ghat there was some poor beggar who had a very ragged quilt. So Sanatana Goswami went there and he said to the beggar, he said, please, can I exchange my blanket with your quilt? I will give you mine. And the beggar said, oh, please, don't make fun of me. Please, don't ridicule me. I'm a poor man. I cannot afford a proper quilt. But Sanatana begged him. He said, no, I'm not joking with you. I'm serious. Please, kindly give me your blanket and you take this one. So that's what happened. They changed the blanket. And Sanatana came back. And Lord Chaitanya was very pleased. Oh, very nice. Very nice. So then Sanatana stayed there in Benares for 2 months with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Rupa Goswami, Rupa Goswami had met Lord Chaitanya at the Prayagraj, we call it today, Prayagraj, right? Where the Ganga and the Yamuna meet, Dash Ashwamedha Ghat. And Rupa Goswami got instruction from Lord Chaitanya for 10 days. But Sanatana Goswami, he got instruction for 2 months. And then after getting instruction from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then Lord Chaitanya sent him to Vrindavan. He said, I have already sent your brother there. This is your Prabhu Datta Desh. Prabhu Datta Desh, the place given by the Prabhu. Prabhu means the spiritual teacher. So you get some place, the teacher, you go and preach there. Becomes your Prabhu Datta Desh. Just like His Holiness Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj. Prabhupada told him, you go to Bhubaneswar. Land had been donated there. You go there, and he was Oriya man, he could speak the language. You go there and preach there. Prabhu Datta Desh. Some different places, there were different devotees were sent different places. You know, Brahmananda was sent to Africa. Upendra was sent to Australia. Garga Muni went to Pakistan. Different places, you see, Prabhupada sent them for preaching. Prabhu Datta Desh, so Rupa and Sanatan, they were sent to Vrindavan. Already there was a couple of devotees there, Lokanath Swami, and also, who else was there? Who was the other Goswami? Who was there? Huh? Huh? Bhugarbha. Huh? Okay, Bhugarbha Goswami. So Lokanath Swami, Bhugarbha, they had been there, but they hadn't done very much. But Rupa and Sanatan came there, and they were given the task to excavate the place of Krishna's pastimes and to establish a temple also to show the proper worship of the Lord. Now they did not bring any money with them. They'd gone to Vrindavan, they did not bring money with them. But still, somehow, they were able to worship. They were able to build temple there. And Sanatan's temple, of course, that is Madan Mohan temple. Very near our Krishna Balaram temple. So, Sanatana Goswami also wrote important books. Brihad Bhagavat Amrita. Right? How many of you read Brihad Bhagavat Amrita? Have you read it? No? You're still reading Prabhupada's books. Right? Brihad Bhagavat Amrita, written by Sanatana Goswami. And Prabhupada mentions in Chaitanya Charitamrita about it. It's a very important book. Sanatana Goswami also wrote Krishna Lila Stava. He wrote also a book about Vaishnava etiquette. So he did a lot of work. He'd come there in his old age, elderly age, not so young, but very, very learned. And they wrote. While I was we went one day, we went from Mayapur, we went to visit a place some distance away from Mayapur, where Vrindavan Das Thakur has his copy of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, his handwritten Chaitanya Bhagavat, the original Chaitanya Bhagavat. It's kept up there. There's a village there, not so far, a few hours away from Mayapur. And there's this one place, and they have the original Chaitanya Bhagavat, written by Vrindavan Das Thakur. So Rupa and Sanatan, they were also writing the same way. They were writing on palm leaves. Writing on palm leaves, you know. We're, what do? You know, we type some things, you know, on our, you have a laptop and you type. But Rupa and Sanatan and Vrindavan Das Thakur, they're writing by hand. Wow. It's so amazing how they, you know, how they do it. And the handwriting's so nice. You know, usually when I write something, and you write something, then rub it out and change it, you know, you make some changes, alterations, corrections. How would they do it? You know, they have palm leaves, just like that, not very big. And they write with ink somehow. They have some kind of feather, peacock feather, and the ink, and they write. So, like this, Sanatana Goswami was living in Vrindavan and chanting the holy name as well, and begging also, doing madhukari, and living under a different tree every night, doing great austerities. So in this way, Sanatana Goswami was living there in Vrindavan. So today is the glorious disappearance of Srila Sanatana Goswami. He returned to his eternal abode in the spiritual world. Today is also the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada's very dear disciple, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami. So Srila Bhakti Charu Swami came to the Krishna consciousness movement. It was the year 1977. It was the final year of Prabhupada's manifested pastimes. He was from Calcutta, and he started to come to our Albert Road temple, and the temple president there at that time was a Prabhupada disciple named Abhirama Prabhu, an American-bodied devotee. So Abhirama met him and liked him, took an interest in him. And so he was interested, he wanted to read one of Prabhupada's books. But in those days, we hardly had books. There were no books. You know, in the time of Indira Gandhi, India was a different place, you know. There were none of these franchise companies, you know, like what you see in India today. There's so many foreign brands and everything. But in the times of Indira Gandhi, the 1970s, India was quite basic and simple. Everything was Indian. It was all the local produce. There was nothing imported. And paper was scarce. It was very difficult to get paper to print books. You had to get permission from the government to get one book printed. And it was not an easy thing to do. So we didn't have books. Whatever books we had, we'd brought them from the West. When we came to India, we'd bring with us. So Bhakti, they wanted to give a book to this young man who later on became Bhakti Charu Swami. And we thought, we had one Bhagavad Gita in the whole temple. Calcutta temple, there was about maybe 12 or 15 devotees. Most of us were all Westerners, a few, 2 or 3 locals. So they wanted to give him the Bhagavad Gita, but it was the only Bhagavad Gita. We didn't have another one. So I said, look, we're using it for class. We have class. If we don't have the Bhagavad Gita, how will we have a class? Well, I said, he's a very good man. He's interested. He wants to read, we should give him the book. I said, well, give him this book, give him the Nectar of Devotion. So he got the Nectar of Devotion and he took it home and he read it and he loved it. He fell in love with it. He thought it was the most beautiful book. And that shows how special he was. Because, somebody like myself, when I read the Nectar of Devotion, it was, wow, I found it very difficult, I couldn't really understand very much. But he was a very special soul. And so, he read the book, he was convinced, he became a devotee, he lived in Mayapur, and Prabhupada came to Mayapur, Prabhupada met him, and Prabhupada talked with him and engaged him. That become, you can do some service, you can help to serve me, one of the servants, direct servant of Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada liked Bengali speaking, nice for him to speak something in Bengali with him, and exchange in the local language. And he was also good in Hindi. Prabhupada had him edit some Hindi translations and so on. So Bhakti Charu he was very literate person. Fluent English, Hindi, Bengali. You can conquer the world if you know these things. You can conquer the world. You can preach anywhere. So Prabhupada gave him first and second initiation at the same time. That was unusual. He got first and second initiation at the same time. And then, a few months later, he got sannyas. And Prabhupada explained, he's very pure since birth. From birth, he's very pure. And so he was a special soul. He came to Krishna consciousness. He came at his age at that time. Let's see, his age must have been about 30, maybe 31, 32. He'd traveled, he'd been to Europe, he'd been hitchhiking, and hitchhiking? You stand at the roadside, you put your thumb out and try to get a vehicle to stop, to give you a lift. So he traveled like that. He enjoyed that kind of thing and meeting people. So, yeah, because it's attracting a lot of flies, Thank you. So he was traveling and meeting people. He'd been to Europe and everything, and he was from quite a wealthy family. His father was in the film industry, and he became a very nice devotee. He was serving Prabhupada, and he knew some cooking, Bengali cooking, and he would cook Bengali dishes for Prabhupada, which Prabhupada appreciated. Because Westerners, we don't really know Bengali cooking. Something, maybe you learn something, but he knew, he was accustomed to it. So Prabhupada gave him that wonderful opportunity to be his servant, and he was with Prabhupada, and they traveled, they went up to Rishikesh at one point, and then they went to Vrindavan, and Bhakti Charu Swami was with them all the time. He was with them up until Prabhupada departed. So the wonderful thing about Bhakti Charu Swami, one thing which everyone could appreciate, was that he was an emblem of gentleness and learning. These two qualities. He was both gentle and learned. Do you know that verse in the Bhagavad Gita? Learned and gentle. A learned and gentle. Vidya Vinaya Sampani. Yeah, you know the verse. You didn't know learned and gentle though. Right? And so he was the emblem of being both learned and also gentle. Very special personality. He could sing very melodiously, very beautifully. Even Jayapataka Swami would appreciate how nicely he could sing beautiful Bengali songs. I have one recording of him singing the Radhastikam. So beautiful and so nice. And then of course he would sing Jagannath Astikam and everything. It was very, very nice, very sweet. So he made a number of recordings. But he was also a very nice preacher. And he would preach, of course he preached in Bengali. He went also to Bangladesh, preached there. He preached extensively in Europe and South Africa, Australia, America. And people generally, particularly the Hindu community, they would be very impressed to see such a nice cultured man, well-mannered, very gentle and very learned. So it was really a great loss for our Krishna consciousness movement that he departed. Of course, he was not a young man, he was 75 when he departed. And so Prabhupada said, he said, 70 years and 10, it is already past. You know the meaning? 70 years and 10? 70. 1 score is 20 years. 3 score is 60, and then plus 10, 70. So once you get to 70, you can die anytime. Prabhupada used to say. He said, Prabhupada would say, 70 years and 10, it is already past. Now once you get to that age, death can come anytime. You don't know when it will come, any day it will come. It's in the Bible actually, mentions like that, 70 years and 10. And Prabhupada knew this, and Prabhupada was quoting that. Prabhupada. So Bhakti Charu Swami was 75. And he was traveling extensively. He liked to go and preach different places. He'd been in Ujjain, and then from Ujjain he went to Nasik. And in Nasik he stayed there, preached there for a day or two, and then from Nasik, then he went to Mumbai, preached there, then took the flight to America, and he was in America. He's developing a project there in Florida. He'd taken one of his men had taken a farm on his request. It used to be a Christian missionary place, and they'd taken it and they were developing it as a Krishna conscious center, that they could have cows there, and at the same time they could have seminars and people could come there. So at that time somehow he got COVID, and so the doctors, he didn't want really to go into the hospital and to take the treatment, but the doctor told him, if you don't, you'll be dead in a few days. And as it was, he departed anyway. And so it was very, very unfortunate. But still, we were very blessed that his divine body could be brought back to Mayapur. And we're very thankful to the Chief Minister of Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, that she facilitated that the devotees approached her and asked her to help. Because usually, particularly a COVID patient, to bring the body back to India, no, could never do it. But somehow they arranged it. She could arrange it. And they thought, we definitely want his body back here. We want it to be in India, in Mayapur. And she arranged it. We got it back. And his samadhi is there now in Mayapur. It's a very nice samadhi, beautiful samadhi, designed by the TOVP team. Very beautiful. So we're feeling his separation today, because it was on this day 2 years ago that he departed from the world. So we're going to speak now about the Upadeshamrita. Are there any questions before we go on about Sanatana Goswami and Bhakti Charu Swami or Guru Purnima? Okay. So I just got an article just by coincidence today, it just came in my mail today. It's on the Upadeshamrita. And it describes the discovery of Sri Upadeshamrita. Isn't it a coincidence? You know, the Prabhu asked me to speak on Upadesh, and I got it just today, it just came today. It's in relation to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He discovered the Upadeshamrita. Rupa Goswami wrote it, of course, but to actually discover it, to bring it into public awareness, it was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur who found it out. And I'll read this article to you. It says, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's profound appreciation for Sri Upadeshamrita is largely responsible for the text's distribution in the present day. During his visit to Sri Vrindavan Dham in the early 1890s, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur visited numerous libraries as he searched for manuscripts of the writings of Srila Rupa Goswami and the other Goswamis in the line of Sriman Mahaprabhu. Just like Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it took him ages to find a copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. These books were not available. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to labor intensely to locate these things. So we're hearing how he went to Vrindavan and he was finding out who's got a library and going to the library, getting their permission to see their library and to go through all the different things in the library. And as I said, you know that not everything is printed. Many things are just on palm leaves. You know, like that Chaitanya Bhagavat we saw, it's, you know, you cannot touch it because, you know, it's so old, 500 years old. A palm leaf, 500 years, you know, if you really damage it. So we don't touch it, we just see it and just offer our respects. So anyway, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gone to Vrindavan and he's searching the libraries. And then when he came to the library of a person named Sri Yukta Vanamali Lala Goswami Vijabhusan. Right? You think our names are long, right? How about that name? Sri Yukta Vanamali Lala Goswami Vijabhusan, a Mahashaya of Sri Radha Raman Gera. He found for the first time a copy of Sri Upadeshamrita. When Sri Yukta Vanamali Goswami was visited by followers of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur on 28th of October 1940, he recounted. So this is like 50 years later, after Bhaktivinoda Thakur had gone there to find the Upadeshamrita. 50 years later, followers of Bhaktivinoda Thakur went to Vrindavan And they met this man, and he recounted what happened. And it's documented in the Gaudiya 21.5 to 8. The Gaudiya must be a magazine or some patrika which they publish. So the incident was recounted that when he first handed Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur a copy of Sri Upadesh Amrita, the Thakur became so deeply astonished and delighted to read the text that he held the manuscript to his head and became overwhelmed by ecstatic symptoms of divine love. His voice began to falter as he repeatedly tried to express his joy in marveling at how profoundly benefited the whole world would be by receiving Sri Upadesh Amrita. Sri Yukta Vanamali Goswami thereafter readily gave Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur a handwritten copy of the text from his forefathers' library, so that it could be printed on a modern press and widely distributed. This is from the introduction of a book called the Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Math edition of Sri Upadesh Amrita, published in 2019 by the Math's London chapter. So Upadesh Amrita, very important book. Actually what happened, how Prabhupada came to write it, I heard there was this one devotee, he was an American, and he'd been serving in India, and somehow he'd gone into the Gaudiya Math and got involved with the Gaudiya Math. And in the Gaudiya Math, they'd made him a sannyasi. You know, in the Gaudiya Math, there's a lot of sannyasis. In ISKCON, we don't have very many sannyasis. Gaudiya Math, they have many sannyasis. So he'd gone to the Gaudiya Math and they made him a sannyas, because Prabhupada wasn't there in India. There was nothing in India. He'd just come to India on his own. And he was staying in the Gaudiya Math and got involved with the Gaudiya Math, and he ended up, they initiated him as a sannyasi. So later on, Prabhupada came back to India and began ISKCON in India. So he came to Prabhupada, he said, I want to come back to ISKCON. So Prabhupada said, then you give up your sannyas. So he gave up his sannyas, he came back to ISKCON, and then after some time, then Prabhupada made him sannyasi again. But he was the one, because he'd been in the Gaudiya Math, and he'd seen this Upadesh Amrita, and he liked it. And he told Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, you should also write a commentary on Upadesh Amrita. And Prabhupada thought, yes, very nice, I should. So at his request, Prabhupada wrote this Upadesh Amrita. And when Prabhupada wrote the Upadesh Amrita, when it first came out, you know, the BBT, some of the BBT people, they were looking at it even before they printed it. They thought, oh, Radha Kund, because it talks about Radha Kund, and so we'd been hearing Prabhupada say, don't go to Radha Kund, and beware of the Babajis at Radha Kund, and all that. So they thought, oh, this is very, very high. They thought for public distribution, it will not be very suitable. So we'll just print a few copies. But Prabhupada said, no. He said, this book is for mass distribution. So they had to print a big volume and distribute the book in mass. Prabhupada didn't mind that it was mentioning about things like Radha Kund. He said he wanted that book in mass distributed. Very, very important. So have you got a copy for me? Did anybody bring a copy? I don't have a copy here. I've got Upadeshamrita is one of the prescribed texts, which we use for Bhakti Shastri. How many of you have completed Bhakti Shastri? Yeah, it's only a few, huh? Yeah. You haven't done Bhakti Shastri? Did you all do that? The ISKCON disciple course? You did the disciple course, yeah. Yeah, you have to do that. Then you should go on and do Bhakti Shastri. Bhakti Shastri. Nowadays, many spiritual masters, they will insist that you complete Bhakti Shastri before taking second initiation. You want to get your second initiation, you must do first Bhakti Shastri. You must study the philosophy. So Bhakti Shastri is the basic philosophy. Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, first part, and then Upadeshamrita, Ishopanishad, these books. So this book was very important for Srila Prabhupada. We'll just read the preface. The Krishna consciousness movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas, or Bengali Vaishnavas, are mostly followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of whom the Six Goswamis of Vrindavan are direct disciples. Therefore, Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung Rupa Raghunatha Pade Haebe Akuti Kabehama Bujahabase Yugala Priti. When I am eager to understand the literature given by the Goswamis, then I shall be able to understand the transcendental loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. Right? You want to understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna? Oh my goodness. You're so eager. Are you qualified to understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna? No. First you have to follow in the footsteps of Rupa and Raghunath, right? When you're eager to understand the literatures given by Rupa and Raghunath, then you will be able to understand Yugala Priti, the conjugal pastimes of Radha and Krishna. There was one book, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati found one book about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and he thought it was very wonderful. And he told his father, he told Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, oh, this is such a wonderful book. I think we should print this book for everyone. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, you can print one copy for yourself. He said, you're the only one qualified to read that book. Because the book was very esoteric. It was about the loving dealings between Radha and Krishna. So we see people often prematurely, they jump to the highest things. Instead of going step by step, they want to jump up to the topmost level to try to understand things on the highest level. It's very dangerous. We have to be very cautious how to approach Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada was very concerned. At the same time, some people argue, they say, well look, Srila Prabhupada gave us the 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. He gave us the Krishna book. So that's the 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. That was the first book I got. You know? So, are we qualified to look on the face of Krishna? The 10th canto is face, right? The first two cantos are the Pada Padma. the lotus feet. And the other cantos are different limbs of the body of Krishna, and the 10th canto is the shining face of Krishna. And so we should, when we go for darshan of the deities, we begin from the lotus feet and we look up, gradually up to the highest level. We don't want to go prematurely. So Srila Prabhupada, however, in writing the Krishna book, was very careful to present the book in such a manner that even a neophyte devotee can understand these topics of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada was very expert in presenting the highest thing and putting it somehow on the lowest level. One of Prabhupada's godbrothers, he didn't have a very good respect for Prabhupada. You know, when Srila Prabhupada went to the West to preach Krishna consciousness, some of Prabhupada's godbrothers were, you know, they were doubtful. Thought, oh, he'll fall down, he won't do anything there, he won't be able to do anything. They didn't think it possible. But when Prabhupada went there and came back with devotees, then they were quite shocked. It was quite a surprise that he could come back with Westerners, bring them back to India. And even some of the other gurus there in the Gaudiya Mat, some of their followers would say to their guru, they'd say, Guruji, you should also go to the West and preach there. So one of them said to his followers, he said, I would not like to preach to those people. In other words, he thought these people, his thinking was these people in the West, they're all low class, malechas, yavanas, chandalas. You know, I don't want to preach to those people. Because he was a scholarly kind of person, you know, very, very scholarly. Now Prabhupada also preached to scholars, and some of Prabhupada's disciples were professors and teachers in the university. It's not that Prabhupada just only preached to hippies. You have to understand that in Prabhupada's time, it was customary for people to grow their hair a little bit. You know, nowadays, you know, you see a lot of people with shaved heads. But in Prabhupada's time, in the 60s, you know, for young people, everyone had, you know, quite a bit of hair, you know, it was customary. But it didn't make you a hippie just because you're... And Mukunda Goswami, I was reading, you know Mukunda Goswami, one of Prabhupada's very first disciples? So Mukunda Goswami said, he never had long hair. He didn't grow his hair but he had hair, of course, he had hair. He had his girlfriend, and you know, he was a young man, he was a musician. He would, you know, jazz musician, played piano. So on, wrote songs, and it was Mukunda who actually wrote that song Govinda. He was the one who arranged it, got Yamuna to sing it, and kind of orchestrated the whole thing. Because he was a musician. Mukunda was a very good musician. So he wasn't a hippie. That's the point. And another lady who was Prabhupada's secretary, a lady called Govinda Devi Dasi. She was a young lady, she joined with her husband, she was married, and she came and joined. She was still young, very young with her husband, and they became devotees, they met Prabhupada, and somehow she became Prabhupada's secretary. So she described, she said, they were both artists, but she said at the same time we were seekers of the truth. We were seekers, we were looking for something. And I thought that is something which is very real. I could appreciate that. I think of myself also being like that. That, you know, I also had a job before I joined. You know, I graduated from university. I didn't drop out. I completed university. I graduated. I took a job. And I just worked for a few months, and I met the devotees, and I gave up everything. But I was a seeker. I was looking. I was trying to looking for a master, somebody who could give me the truth and who could answer questions about life. So she said like that. She said, most of our devotees were in that kind of category. We were looking for the truth. We wanted answers. We had questions and we wanted to get the answers. And when we met the Krishna consciousness movement, that was where we got the real answers, the best answers. So it was really inspiring. So here we are. The Krishna consciousness movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. We're known as Rupanugas. Alright? Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidananda Namane Guru Shakti Swarupaya. Right? Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He got the name Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod. He wrote a poem or an article about Lord Chaitanya describing him as Satchidananda Gauranga. And from that time of that article, they started calling Satchidananda Kedarnath Datta. Satchidananda, and it became Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Somehow he kept that name, that Satchidananda, and stuck with him, that appellation there. We don't know these things, you know, but it's very interesting to hear like that. Just like Prabhupada got the name Bhaktivedanta before taking sannyas. He was still a householder. He got the name Bhaktivedanta. So they have that culture in the Gaudiya Math, giving people, like we heard Vidyabhusan, right? Vidyabhusan. So it's a title, it's a name given in appreciation of some qualities which they have. We want to try to introduce these things gradually into ISKCON also. We can also, if they're worthy people. So we are followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. We are Rupanugas. And Rupa Goswami, of course, wrote Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And this nectar of devotion, this nectar of instruction rather, this is like a condensed version of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The same kind of philosophy, the same points which are there in nectar of devotion are here in the nectar of instruction. You have to appreciate that when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur found the Upadesha Amrita, there were no purports. How many verses are in Upadesha Amrita? 11. How many mantras are in Ishopanishad? 18. Yes, right. How many chapters in Bhagavad Gita? 18. How many verses in Srimad Bhagavatam? 18,000. Did you ever count them? If you count them, you'd be shocked. It doesn't come up to 18,000, but they explain there's 18,000 because the manner, some of the verses are written in prose, so they're not just one verse. So to actually get 18,000, you have to understand how they divide the verses. It's not just the number of the verse. How many verses in Valmiki Ramayana? 24,000. How many syllables in the Gayatri mantra? 24. Yeah. So Valmiki Ramayana, each 1,000 verses, he begins with a syllable from the Gayatri mantra. So, Valmiki Ramayana is an expression of meditation on the Supreme Lord. Just like Gayatri mantra is a meditation on the Supreme Lord, Valmiki Ramayana is also meditation on the Supreme Lord. So we are meditating on Rupa Goswami and his instructions here, the nectar of instruction. We want to follow in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada gave sannyas to Satsvarupa Maharaj and Hridayananda Maharaj, 1972 or 73. The first Goswami was Tamal Krishna Goswami. Tamal Krishna Goswami, he took sannyas in Jaipur in front of Radha Govinda, and he took it on the, was it Vasant Panchami? I think it was Vasant Panchami when he took the sannyas. Anyway, Tamal Krishna got the title Goswami. At that time, Prabhupada told him, he told the devotees, he said, he has given up everything to preach Krishna consciousness. Because Tamal Krishna Goswami had been a householder, he had accepted a wife, but he was taking sannyas as a young man. And he'd also been the GBC, but in that time, if you become a sannyasi, the standard was that you're going to take sannyas, you give up being GBC. You can't be a manager because sannyasi's duty is just to preach, not so much managing, not so much administration. Sometimes they have to do it, but generally sannyasis just travel, preach. So Tamal Krishna was the first Goswami, and then later on in the USA, Hridayananda Maharaj and Satsvarupa Maharaj both got sannyas. They'd both been in householder life, and they both got the name Goswami. So they asked Prabhupada, what does it mean to be a Goswami? And at that time, Prabhupada told them, you study the Goswami Astikam. Right? Do you know the Goswami Astikam? Yeah? Some temples we recite it every morning, the whole Goswami Astikam. Right? Because, well, it describes the activities of a Goswami. Right? What are the activities of the Goswami described there? You know any? Yeah, what's the meaning? Tell me.
They were studying and...
You Indian guys are all like this. You speak Sanskrit, you never know how to describe it in English.
They were
scrutinizingly studying
all the Vedic scriptures.
All the revealed scriptures,
And they were
with the aim of
for the benefit of
with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Yes, right. Very good. Not bad. Pretty good. You're pretty close. Yeah, you know the meaning. Right. Nana Shastra Vicharinai Kanapano. They studied all the scriptures. Prabhupada said, we don't have to study. We don't have to do research. It's already done for us. The Goswamis already did it. They researched all the scriptures. Just like we heard just now, I read. Bhaktivinoda Thakur found Upadeshamrita. The books are already there. Chaitanya Charitamrita is there. We don't have to go and look. Where is the Chaitanya Charitamrita? It's already there for us. We're so fortunate. And what to speak, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he found Upadesha, he just found 11 verses. Then he wrote a commentary on it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote commentary on Upadeshamrita. Later on, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati added a little bit more also to the commentary. And there's another commentary by a man from the Radha Raman temple in Vrindavan. One of the caste sannyasis there, one of the Goswamis there in Radha Raman temple, he also wrote a commentary on the Upadesh Amrita. And Prabhupada has given us his commentary. So we're so fortunate because we've not only got the text, but we've got the Acharya's opinion. In Prabhupada's book, he will say this, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in his commentary, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said in his commentary. Prabhupada is giving us everything. And you can see in Srimad Bhagavatam how Prabhupada said, Ramanujacharya says like this, and Sridhar Swami said like that, and Balabhacharya says, and he quotes all the acharyas wherever it's important. We're so fortunate. We have to take advantage of all of these wonderful gifts. Right? Our family treasures. Just like, family, they have the family heirlooms. Maybe in the family they keep the treasure, they keep jewelry, valuable jewels and so on. They keep it, it's their treasure, and they pass it on to the father passes it on to the eldest son, like the eldest son passes to his son, the family heirloom. So we have our treasures, right? These books, Prabhupada's books, they're so valuable. There's so much nectar, so much to be gained from them. So we are following in the tradition of Srila Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami, sometimes he's described as the leader of the Goswamis. Actually, he's the younger brother of Srila Sanatana Goswami. He was younger brother. Sanatana was senior. But sometimes they say Rupa Goswami is the senior because his books were so elevated. He wrote, of course, 2 dramas, Lalita Madhava and Vidagdha Madhava, 2 important dramas. Did you ever try to read them? Very difficult. Very difficult. You don't know where to begin. If you look at the book, it's so bewildering. But they're very famous dramas, 2 dramas. So, at least for myself, even Bhakti Purushottam Swami, he sometimes will give a talk on the drama, Vidagdha Madhava or Lalita Madhava, and he will say, yeah, you see, I think it's like this. He's also not very sure, but just try to understand. We're so lucky. Prabhupada wrote so nicely for us, like Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. If we were to just read Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it's not easy, it's just verses, one verse after another, so many verses from this canto and that canto and this scripture, that scripture. But Prabhupada has put it into a nice readable form that we can benefit. We read it carefully, we can greatly benefit from it. And Prabhupada said Nectar of Devotion is a handbook for devotees. Handbook, just like if you're working for Indian Railways, you have the handbook. Right? So we have our handbook, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We should keep it with us. Some temples, they read it every morning. I think over in Abbott's, the Abbott's temple, they used to read there every morning. Is that devotee Anandamaya still there? Yeah? He used to read every morning after Mangalarti, just for 2 minutes. He'll just read a sentence or something. But every morning he'll read a little bit from Nectar of Devotion. Alright, so Rupa Goswami, we're Rupanukas, we're trying to follow in the footsteps of Rupa Goswami. They studied all the scriptures and they also conquered over eating and sleeping. right? They conquered over eating and sleeping. They were always meek and humble. They gave up all the wealth. They accepted loincloth to live in Vrindavan. They were so renounced, and they never had any regret. You know, sometimes people, they give up. Oh, I used to be so wealthy, and now I have nothing. I gave up everything. And, you know, they almost lament, you know. But the Goswamis, they gave up everything, and they were always in the ocean of the mood of love of Krishna. They were always in the mood of the gopis. What is the mood of the gopis?
Separation from Krishna.
Huh?
Separation from Krishna.
Yeah. Vipralamba seva. Service in separation. Service in separation. Not just separation, but oh Krishna, but service in separation. That's the mood of the gopis. We have to do service also. We do devotional service. So Rupa Goswami did so much service for Krishna in the mood of separation from Krishna. So Prabhupada stresses to us, we want to understand the Bengali Gaudiya Vaishnavas, mostly followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many Vaishnavas. We know there are 4 Sampradayas. And then we're coming from the Madhva Sampradaya. We're the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So at one point, the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition was challenged by the Ramanandi Vaishnavas. The Ramanandis, they said, you Gaudiya Vaishnavas, you have no commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And they were trying to influence the king of Jaipur, because the king of Jaipur at that time was a great devotee. And that's why Govindaji is there in Jaipur, because the king of Jaipur is always a devotee. So these Ramanandis, they were saying that these Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they're not genuine. They have no real sampradaya. Their sampradaya is bogus. They don't even have a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. All the other acharyas wrote commentary on Vedanta Sutra. Ramanujacharya, Nimbarkacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami, even Shankaracharya. No, Shankaracharya, he didn't write commentary. He did. He did write commentary. Shariraka is Shankaracharya's commentary on Vedanta Sutra. But the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we were always saying, Srila Vyasadev's Bhagavatam is the commentary on Vedanta Sutra. No need to write commentary on Vedanta Sutra. We have Srimad Bhagavatam, the author's own commentary. And Prabhupada gives an example to support this. He gives the example, he said there was one man, he wrote the book about Shah Jahan. He called the book Shah Jahan, right? Everybody knows Shah Jahan, right? You people all know Shah. If I was not in India, then you have to say who Shah Jahan is. But in India, everybody knows Shah Jahan. But the book is all about Aurangzeb. So people reading the book, they think Shah Jahan, but the book is all telling about Aurangzeb. So why call the book Shah Jahan? Your book is all about Aurangzeb and what he's doing, the atrocities and everything. So the author explained, the author who wrote the book, he explained, he said, I wrote this book to explain Shah Jahan's mood. That when Aurangzeb is doing all the atrocities, the father is in the jail, and his brothers are being killed by Aurangzeb, and Aurangzeb's doing so many atrocities, killing so many brahmanas, and doing so many things, breaking the temples and everything. So Shah Jahan is feeling very bad that my son is such a demon, he's such a bad person. So the book is about Shah Jahan feeling the distress over his son. But only the author could explain the purpose behind the book. So similarly, we say Srila Vyasadev's commentary on Vedanta Sutra is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Vyasadev wrote Vedanta Sutra. He knows the purpose of Vedanta Sutra. And he's given the commentary in Srimad Bhagavatam. But no, everybody wrote their own commentary. If you Gaudiya Vaishnavas are genuine, where is your commentary on Vedanta Sutra? So, the message came to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Vrindavan. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he was very old at that point and he was in poor health. He didn't want to leave Vrindavan. But Baladeva Vidyabhusan was there. And Baladeva Vidyabhusan had been trained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur told Baladeva Vidyabhusan, you go to Jaipur. You go to Jaipur and answer their challenge. So Baladeva Vidyabhusan went there to Jaipur. And then they told him, where is your commentary? Bring your commentary, let's see it. So Baladeva Vidyabhusan prayed to Govindaji, and we get Govinda Bhashya. His commentary is called Govinda Bhashya, the speaking of Govinda. And Prabhupada dedicates his Bhagavad Gita to the Govinda Bhashya, because Baladev wrote so nicely the commentary on Vedanta. And because he wrote commentary on Vedanta, Ramanandis were defeated. And the king of Jaipur was happy. He said, see, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they're good, they're genuine. So we are Gaudiya Vaishnavas. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism, you see there are different kinds of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Generally, everybody is a devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not all, some. Most people follow Chaitanya. But then, followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not all follow Rupa Goswami. There are different people, different followers. Some people devoted to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they don't bother about Rupa Goswami. They may follow maybe Lord Nityananda, or maybe Advaita Acharya. So many great devotees there, right? Not everybody is a follower of Rupa Goswami, but we're following Rupa Goswami. The Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada said, 6 Goswamis direct disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I don't know about that. Did Jiva Goswami actually meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Anybody know? Did Jiva Goswami ever meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? I don't think so. But Prabhupada says here, they're all direct disciples. Yeah?
When he was young.
When he was a very young boy, yeah? Yeah, maybe because he met Rupa and Sanat. And Balaba, of course, Jiva was the son of Balaba. Balaba was the brother of Rupa and Sanatan. So Balaba had died and Jiva was brought up under the care of Rupa, his 2 uncles. Okay, so when he was a young boy, just like Tapana Mishra met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had gone to Bangladesh and Tapana Mishra had come to take shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, go to Benares and I'll meet you in Benares. And so at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met the son of Tapana Mishra, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, he was the son of Tapana. And Lord Chaitanya told him, you stay with your mother and father till they leave the world. After they leave the world, then you come to Vrindavan. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami Lord Chaitanya had met him in Trichy at Sri Rangam, and Lord Chaitanya got letters, some correspondence from him. Lord Chaitanya encouraged him to go to Vrindavan, and Gopal Bhatta went to Vrindavan. And he was very helpful to edit some of the writings because he was born in that nice family, he was expert in Sanskrit, and he could help to edit the writings of Rupa, Sanatan, like that. So the Goswami, and then Raghunath, of course, Raghunath Goswami, he is not from the Brahmana family, not the Brahmana caste, but he comes to Jagannath Puri and he takes shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then later after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left the world, then Raghunath went to Vrindavan and took shelter of Rupa and Sanatan. So this way the Goswamis, they're all direct disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we're following these Goswamis. So Narottam Das Thakur tells us, we want to understand the pastimes of Krishna. When you're eager to understand the literature given by the Goswamis, then one will be able to understand the transcendental loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. So that eagerness, utsahan, right? That's going to come up in the very utsahan, that eagerness, that enthusiasm to understand the literature of the Goswamis, to read the books of the Goswamis. Just like Bhanu Swami's translated the Sandarbhas. Jiva Goswami wrote the 6 Sandarbhas, which are wonderful comments on different points in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's so many books to read. It's, you know, it's just sometimes it's just bewildering. There's just so much to be read, so much to do. We have to chant, we have to read the books. Oh, I have to worship. There's so many things to be done. Where's the time? So that's the task of a devotee. Nobody can say, oh, I don't have any service. We all have so much service. We have so much to do, so many books to read, rounds to chant, service to be done. So reading the books of the Goswamis, so much to be, so much nectar. It's all waiting for you, right? You just be eager. Have you got a good program to read every day? Are you reading every day? You have to read every day. Make a point. You have to read all of Srila Prabhupada's books first, and then you can go on to read the other books. So it's very important for us. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in order to bestow unto human society the benediction of the signs of Krishna. The most exalted of all the activities of Lord Krishna are his pastimes of conjugal love with the gopis. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the mood of Srimati Radharani, the best of the gopis. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and follow in his footsteps. One must very seriously follow in the footsteps of the 6 Goswamis. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahabhadanaya avatar, this was declared by Rupa Goswami, that you're the most merciful. Other incarnations, Lord Krishna came, he brought with him a storehouse of love of God, but the contents was kept sealed. Right? Lord Krishna said, Sarva Dharmam Parigashanam Mamika. First surrender. Once you surrender, then I will deliver. But Lord Chaitanya does not make any such conditions. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nitya, they are giving freely love of God by chanting the holy name and dancing. And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Panchatattva, they broke open the storehouse of love of God. They plundered the contents and they distributed it everywhere. They did not consider who was qualified and who was not. Young men, old men, women and children, they gave to everyone love of God. This is Mahaprabhu's mercy. Distribute. And the more they distributed, the more the supply increased hundreds of times. The more we give the mercy, the more you get the mercy. So don't be miserly, right? Be generous, right? Brahmana is generous. Not miserly Brahmana, Kripana. Kripana, there's Brahmana and Kripana, right? So the miser, they won't give. They want to keep. No, not giving. But the Brahmana, he will give because this is a mode of the devotee. Prabhupada went to America. I did not come to beg from you. I have come to give you. So many Swamijis went to America and they were all declaring themselves to be God. But their mood is collect money, get money and take it back to India and live comfortably in India. Build a nice ashram in India and live comfortably. That was the mood. Go to the West, get the money, come back to India. And we see a lot of that today. Many people, they go to the West, they work in the West, work in America, they build the house here, right? Make the money there, then they come back and settle here. Take it easy here. But Prabhupada said, I have come to give. What is Prabhupada giving? Krishna consciousness. What you have forgotten, that most important message, you've forgotten. You have to, has to be given again. So Prabhupada was very careful about that to give. The mood of a devotee is giving. The Panchatattva, they gave. We don't need to beg or take from people. We've come to give them. Sometimes think, why are you people always out here begging? You know, when we would go for book distribution, you people always out here beg. They don't understand. We're not begging. We don't need your money. You need Krishna. If I'm begging you to read this book. Give up your sinful activities. Reform your character. That's what I beg. I don't need your money. We're very capable. We can live very comfortably if we want. We don't need to just... Some people, you know, they just focus only on money, make money. Prabhupada never worried about money. Even in Prabhupada's time, we had no money. I got initiated. Bhakti Charu Swami also got initiated when he got initiated. I read his book. Bhakti Charu Swami wrote his autobiography about Krishna consciousness, how he came to Krishna consciousness, you know, what he was doing before becoming a devotee, and then he became, and he wrote about his time, and he described how he got initiation, and he told Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, you say I have no money, I don't have any money to give you Guru Dakshin. And Prabhupada said, that's all right. He said, you're giving your life. You're giving your life. So I remember when I got initiated also, I got initiated in London in '71. And so we got initiated, we were about 18 of us got initiated from Prabhupada that time. Oh, we were all young people, you know, all young men. And Prabhupada initiated us. But then Prabhupada, after the next day, Prabhupada called the temple president into his room. Temple president was a man who come from America. He was a householder. So he'd come to England to help us because we were all new, and he'd been this man who came from America, he'd been a devotee 4 or 5 years. So he was a long time devotee, you know. And we were just like 4 or 5 months. So he was an old devotee. So he called the president to his room. Prabhupada said, you know, he said, I gave all these men initiation. He said, none of them gave me any Guru Dakshin. And the temple president said, Srila Prabhupada, they don't have any money. They don't have any money. We didn't have anything. We gave everything. I had money when I joined. The temple took it all away. Gave everything. Yeah. When I quit my job, the money I got, the salary, all went to pay the rent for the temple. Rented house, you know. And so, but anyway, we went on Sankirtan that afternoon, and whatever we collected on Sankirtan, we gave that to Prabhupada. It wasn't very much though. It was quite interesting though. I'd forgotten about it, but then I was reading my teacher Swami's book, and he was describing, and I remembered how it also happened when I... But sometimes, you know, some of the gurus, some people, they're very, you know, how much will you give me when I initiate? Or they will charge, they have a charge. You want to get initiation, this is a charge, you know, fixed price, you know. But Prabhupada wasn't like that. Okay, any questions? Anybody has any questions? Yes, Prabhu?
Prabhuji, you spoke about the dramas. I always wondered, why do we call these books as natak or drama? Because our understanding, like my understanding of drama is something which is written, scripted, not like very original. So why do we call these books as dramas or natak?
Well, I don't know the answer to your question. They must be written somehow according to the rules of drama. There are certain principles, just like Jagannath Priya Natikam. Tamal Krishna Goswami wrote that drama, and he wrote it according to the rules of Sanskrit drama. So there are rules. Are you familiar with the rules of Sanskrit drama? That's right, neither am I. That's why we can't understand what is a drama and what's not, you see. But we're told, you know, Rupa Goswami wrote these 2 dramas. So we just have to accept that these are dramas. Maybe if we study more, about Sanskrit drama and everything, then maybe we can understand why these are dramas. But certainly they are accepted as dramas. They're very, very elevated books, you know. They're really not so easy thing to enter into. Understanding these Rupa Goswami's dramas. Kavi Karnapur also wrote dramas, right? He wrote a drama, Chaitanya Chandra Natada. What's it called? Chaitanya Chandra Nataka. Something like that. There's a number of important dramas. Yes?
When Rupa Goswami met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
When?
Rupa Goswami met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Yes?
Like Sanatana Goswami met like after that releasing from come that person.
No, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come to Ramakeli. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came there to Ramakeli while they were still serving the Nawab. And Mahaprabhu came there, at that time he came there were many, many people following him. Because he was so famous, you know, everybody wanted to follow him, everybody wanted to get dust from his feet, everybody wanted to get blessing. So there were lakhs, and there's a description when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was at Vijayanagar, all the people were crossing the Ganga. The whole Ganga was filled with people in boats. All you could see were boats, you couldn't see any Ganga. All you could see all the people coming. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was hiding in the house. And suddenly he came out and this huge roar, Haribo! You know? Everybody saw Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you know, it just became so much. All these people were following him. And they followed him all the way down to Ramakeli. So that when he came there to Ramakeli, the Nawab heard about that there's this sadhu and he's got all these people following him. And the Nawab asked one of the devotees about it. There was this one devotee who was serving him. Oh, who was it Makunda? Was it one physician? Anyway, he said, who is the sadhu with all these people? And they said, oh, he's nobody, he's just he's got some mystic power, you know. He didn't want to tell the Nawab too much, because if the Nawab understood that this is the incarnation of God, you don't know what will happen, you know. Maybe the Nawab will want to arrest him and try to keep him or something, to get blessings or something from. Anyway, they tried to make it not very significant. But then Rupa and Sanatan, they told Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you're going to go to Vrindavan, you cannot take all these people. It's not good to go to the holy place with all these people. Of course, we do it nowadays, you know, you get so many yatras. The yatra, this yatra, the yatra, many, many people. But they told Rupa and Sanatan, they told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to go to Vrindavan, you shouldn't go with all these people. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu agreed. Yeah, you're right, I shouldn't go. So, changed his mind, didn't go to Vrindavan. But they met there, Ramakeli. That's why I said his lotus feet are there at Ramakeli, just beside the temple, where that little temple is, with the Madan Mohan deities, which Sanatan had. And outside there's a pillar and there's a statue, and they've got the lotus feet put by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went there, he met them, and he told them, leave the job, right? Quit that job. You could imagine, you know, we think we're working in the corporate industry or something. Oh, I have a good job, I don't know if I want to give up. Look at their job. They were working in the government, you know, big positions. Practically, you know, they were ministers in the government of the Nawab. And they were making so much wealth, so huge amounts of wealth. They gave it all up as insignificant.
We heard in the morning lecture of Prabhupada that the one quality of Brahmana is truthfulness, Satya. And we see here Sanatana Goswami also lies to it. And sometimes we also apply in our situation, we lie sometimes. So in what case we should do what?
Well, Prabhupada, if you read the purport there, about, no, it's in the Bhagavatam, about Dhritarashtra quits home. Dhritarashtra had gone away from home. And Maharaj Yudhisthira didn't know. They'd been living in the palace with Maharaj Yudhisthira, and Maharaj Yudhisthira was taking care of his uncle, his blind uncle. But Vidura came, and Vidura preached to Dhritarashtra and convinced Dhritarashtra, get out from the house. Don't stay in the house. All right? But you have to get, because the attachment is so strong. The attachment to the family, the home. You have to get out from the home and prepare for leaving the body. This is a Vedic culture. So, Dhritarashtra finally was convinced by Vidura. They didn't tell Maharaj Yudhisthira. And the next day Maharaj Yudhisthira is looking. Where are my uncles? Where's my uncles? Oh, Gandhari also gone. Gandhari's also gone. Where have they gone? And then he thought about it. And he said, I have been cheated by these great souls. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, he said, that great souls cheat for a great cause. Right? So you can, if your cheating is for a great cause, it's all right. You have to consider, what is the cause of your cheating? Why are you cheating? Is it for your sense gratification, or is it for Krishna's service? Right? Of course, Dhritarashtra wasn't going to serve Krishna, but he wasn't able to serve Krishna, but for a greater cause. He wanted to get out of the attachment to the material world. He did that. He got freed of his attachment to the material world. And he got impersonal liberation. He wasn't ready for devotion. So you can cheat for a great cause. There are many examples of cheating. As you said, Sanatan cheated the jailer, told the jailer, I'm going to go to Mecca. And then, who else cheated? Lord Vamanadev? Yeah, well, did he cheat? He said 3 steps of land. 3 steps. He got 3 steps, right? Special steps. Who cheated? Some other cheaters? Cheating? Huh? Who? What did he do? Oh yes, right. Ashwatthama in the battle of Kurukshetra. Ashwatthama is dead. Ashwatthama, the elephant, is dead. So then Drona hears that and then he stops fighting. And then they can kill Drona. Cheating for a great cause. Prabhupada told his wife, he said, do you want tea or you want me? His wife said, tea or you? I'd rather have tea. So Prabhupada, okay. He left home. Going. So some transcendental trickery. Yeah. So great souls cheat for a great cause. Yes, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much Maharaj for a wonderful session. Maharaj, little difficult to understand when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the instruction to Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami to go and excavate all the places. So now we, in current scenario, we see the archaeological department, they go and they see all the identical things are there. And that's how they identify. So how these great souls identify that these are the places of the past times of Radha and Krishna?
Well, just like, how did Bhaktivinoda Thakur find out the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? He checked maps and he read the scriptures, and in the scriptures it talks about things like the Chankasi. So the Chankasi Samadhi is there, right? You've been to Mayapur? Yeah, so you've seen the Chankasi Samadhi. So Chankasi Samadhi, you know, the Chankasi was there in the times of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Later on he took Samadhi and his Samadhi is there. And so it's a historic site. And we go there every year. There's a big champaka tree, and there's also the neem tree. So Champaka was the name of the Chankasi, and neem was the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the two trees, big trees, very big, they're there at the Samadhi of the Chankasi. The Chankasi Samadhi, you see, people were saying the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was on the other side of the Ganga, it was in Navadvip. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur knew it couldn't be in Navadvip, because the Chankasi Samadhi is there. And Lord Chaitanya had come from his home to go to the Chankasi Samadhi. So, by maps and checking old maps and so on, and different information from Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita, they could understand. Birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could not be on that other side of the Ganga. It had to be on this. And then they located it by divine revelation. There was the effulgence. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was over in Swarupganj in his house, and he could see the effulgence there, and he went there. And then he saw many tulsis are growing there. And then when they did excavation, they found a deity of, one of the deities, a deity of Vishnu. Which deity was it? One deity, a form of Vishnu was there, which was worshipped by Jagannath Mishra. So this way, and then also he brought Jagannath Das Babaji, and Jagannath Das Babaji, he's over 100 years old, but he comes there, he jumps in the air. He said, yes, this is the birthplace. So Sadhu, Shastra and Guru, you can understand. Similar, now Lord Chaitanya came to Vrindavan, and he was, where is Radha Kund? Nobody knew, where is Radha Kund? Rupa and Sanatana, they didn't know. But then they found there's this one village, Aristagram, just near Aristagram. Now Lord Krishna had killed the bull, Aristasura, and that's why created Radha Kund and Shama Kund, right? That's the Leela. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found the village, and then he found the rice. He went into the rice field and said, "This is Radha Kund." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, so he knows where is Radha Kund, and he revealed it to all the devotees. So many wonderful pastimes that took place. Govardhan Hill, you don't have difficulty to understand Govardhan Hill, right? Okay, so we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.